Greetings everyone, how are you? This is Jamaican Toy, back with you again as we prepare to go into another discussion on our constitutional reform process as our ruling class continues in their attempts to dismantle our constitution and replace it with one of their own. I'm asking you all to please like, share, subscribe, and spread the word. Most importantly, spread the word, because the government is moving with alacrity and therefore we should do the same if we are to counter them effectively. Now, with that said, let's get into our little discussion today. And today's discussion will be a continuation on our last topic, which has to do with the monarchy and race, and the fact that the anti-royalists love to use race rhetoric as a means to justify their stance regarding the monarchy. And of course, given that today is the birthday of one of our national heroes, Marcus Garvey, it is of course very fitting that we are talking about race today. Because, the whole idea of African pride and black pride and all these things, and the fact that, African descended people should be proud of themselves and proud of their achievements and all of that. And to be honest, we on this side, we take no issue with any of that. As a matter of fact, we support all of that. What we oppose and what we continue to oppose is a president and a republic. And we do not believe that having a hereditary monarch necessarily means that we don't love ourselves, or it means that we don't like being black, or it means that we want to be white, or any of that. That is not what it means. And that was never what, of course, was taught. Because, of course, we know that Marcus Garvey, for example, taught persons that they should look forward to the resurgence of black monarchies in Africa, which, of course, was what a certain movement used to justify their belief in the late Emperor Haile Selassie. And of course, we on this side are actually supporters of the late Emperor Selassie, as you can clearly see by the fact that I have his banner behind me. So we don't have an issue with any of that. What we do have an issue with, and what we continue to have an issue with, is the idea that being of a certain skin tone means then that we must subscribe to a political philosophy of republicanism. We reject republicanism categorically. Always have, always will. And we will not be bamboozled by the rhetoric of those who would have us think that, they have a monopoly on what it means to be black, what it means to be Jamaican, what it means to be of African descent, and all of that. Because if that's the case, then that means that all black persons who live in majority white countries, like for example the United States, for example, should basically get up and leave then, because the president of that country is white. Or black persons in France should get up and leave because the head of state of that country is white. No one would reasonably advocate for that, because at the end of the day, the persons who are intertwining race with republicanism, really and truly, they don't really care for race. What they care for is their agenda, and they're using race as a scapegoat. That's all that it is. We've seen this over and over and over again. I'll give you one example of that. And that example I'm going to use is that of apartheid South Africa. And of course, I have heard, I don't know how many others I have heard, on several occasions that the monarchy was either responsible for apartheid or supported apartheid. No. Anybody who knows the history of what took place in South Africa during the apartheid period will be well aware of how untrue such an assertion is. Not only was the monarchy not a supporter of apartheid, the monarchy actually bitterly opposed apartheid, due of course to the fact that there were a lot of black African nations within the Commonwealth, and the monarchy, as the sponsor of the Commonwealth, would of course not be supporting something that was not in the interest of the majority of the peoples of the Commonwealth. As a matter of fact, the African regime in South Africa, not African, no, African, Afrikaan, right? That regime in South Africa was so bitterly opposed to the monarchy that they actually held a popular referendum. And that referendum was passed with a majority of persons voting in favor of republic. But here's what they don't tell you. In that referendum, native black Africans were not allowed to vote. It was only the white minority that was allowed to vote. So now tell me, if the monarchy was such a racist institution as they claim, why is it that the white minority in South Africa voted in favor of abolishing the monarchy? Does it make sense? You think that they would be the ones who would be the greatest supporters of the monarchy. But of course, they were Republican from the outset. And a matter of fact, you know what? No, let me leave that one alone. Come back to that one another time. Where was that? Yes, I was speaking of the situation in South Africa in the 1960s when the African regime, the apartheid regime in South Africa came to power. And of course, they wasted no time in getting rid of the monarchy. Racist? I think not. Especially when you consider the fact that even though there were some in Britain's government who continued to maintain relations with the apartheid regime in South Africa, the royal family was not a part of that. I challenge anyone to find me any photographs of Queen Elizabeth with any of the apartheid presidents in that era in South Africa. You never find them. What you will find are pictures of the Queen with ANC leaders, such as Nelson Mandela or Thabo Mbeki, or I don't know what the other president is now. Yes, Jacob Zuma. You'll find pictures of the Queen with those African leaders. What you will not find is her supporting the apartheid regime. So that argument falls flat on its face. Then of course there's the whole matter of what took place in Africa's neighbor Zimbabwe, which back in the day used to be called Rhodesia. And what happened in Rhodesia was a very, very weird scenario. So, in the 1960s, the government in Rhodesia, which was of course a white minority government, decided that, they were going to declare their independence from the British Empire. And of course, UK decided that, they're not going to give it to them until they establish a government that caters to the majority. You know what the Rhodesians did? Rhodesians said, we don't care. We are going to declare independence anyway. And by the way, when I say Rhodesians, I mean the white Rhodesians. The black persons will be referred to as Zimbabweans and the white as Rhodesians, just for clarity. So, after that happened, the Rhodesians tried to set up a government in the Queen's name. Bear in mind, they were independent, yes, but they had a constitution like ours, or they tried to have a constitution like ours. There was one problem with that. The Queen herself, she decided that she was not going to appoint a governor general, nor was she going to recognize the government in Rhodesia/Zimbabwe. And that continued for the next 5 years until the Rhodesians decided that they had enough and they are going to declare a republic. And that, of course, escalated in what we call the Rhodesian Bush Wars and the Zimbabwean Wars of Independence. So that entire time period, do you know when the monarchy finally recognized the independence of that country? When Rhodesia fell and Zimbabwe took its place. They refused to recognize a white racist government, but they did recognize a black majority African government. So when persons try to convince me that Queen Elizabeth or King Charles is racist, I would say, show me the evidence. They can't show the evidence. What they like to point to are incidents that happened in the 1700s and the 1800s when the House of Hanover used to rule Britain. To be honest, we're not in the Hanoverian days anymore. The House of Windsor now rules. And because of that, I will not be attempting to defend what happened with the Hanovers or any previous dynasty before. What I am defending is the Constitution of Jamaica as we have it right now and its retention. That is all I'll say on the matter. And before I sign off here, I cannot end this discussion by getting into more contemporary issues. So we talk about what happened in the reign of Queen Elizabeth. But I need to talk about what's happening right now. And the elephant in the room, which is of course the Sussexes. And those of you who have been following royal news over the past 3-4 years knows what has been happening on that front, where the Duchess of Sussex, who is the first black descended person to marry into the royal family, she's not entirely black, she's actually mixed race, half black, half white, and she made certain allegations regarding the quote-unquote racism in the royal family. And Republicans, of course, were very gleeful for this, that they could use as ammunition. Fine, take what they can get. I, however, am not very inclined to take such allegations seriously. And here's the reason why. In that very same interview where she made those allegations, she also made several other statements that were proven to be false. For example, she claimed that her children were not given prince and princess titles because of their African ancestry that comes through her. That, of course, is false. The truth of the matter is they were not given any titles at the time because Queen Elizabeth was still alive. And as great-grandchildren of the sovereign who were outside of the direct line, they were not then entitled to having any such nomenclature. However, now that the Queen has passed and the grandfather is on the throne, as grandchildren of the monarch, they have now been given the titles which are their birthright. And we know this. So that, in and of itself, we know to be false. She also made statements regarding how she was treated by certain palace staff, even though as a senior member of the royal family, she would be in a higher position of power and authority than persons who are just mere staff. So we know that when it comes to things like those, there is absolutely no way that can be true. She also made certain statements regarding the ceremony itself, and of course those statements have still been refuted by the Archbishop of Canterbury who conducted the ceremony. So we know she says things that are not true. So because of that, I'm also very much inclined to believe that that part, like everything else that was mentioned in the interview, is also false. And because of that, I am not inclined to take those allegations very seriously. It's far too convenient of a scapegoat to be used by the enemies of the crown in order to take them seriously. So, with that said, everything that I've said in this discussion and last discussion, the main point that I want to get from this is that at the end of the day, whether you are black or, well, the majority of us are black because we're Jamaican, but we do know that we have, white Jamaicans and Chinese Jamaicans in the minority. Whatever you are, we are out of many one people. However, doesn't matter what your racial background or racial ancestry is. The fact of the matter is, we have a constitution. A constitution that has been crafted by our founding fathers and gifted to us, the people of this nation. It was their legacy to us. And it is up to us to protect that legacy at all costs. And to tell this government, hands off our constitution. It is not yours, it is ours. And we will not allow you to use your rhetoric to trick us into giving you more power. Because at the end of the day, it's not about black, it's not about white, it's not about race, it's about power. They want more power. And we must show them that the power does not belong to them, it belongs to us, the people of this country.